Lately, we have been introducing you to all the amazing products Ascent Nutrition has to offer. This week, I'm very excited to tell you about their full-spectrum hemp oil. Ascent Nutrition's full-spectrum hemp oil utilizes superior plant genetics and an organic proprietary blend of natural ingredients. Their hemp oil contains not only an abundance of CBD, but 119 other phytocannabinoids found within the spectrum of the hemp plant. According to the National Center of Biotechnology Information, this strain is the gold standard in hemp genome sequencing. Ascent also uses a unique method that ensures infusion of significantly more phytocannabinoids and CBD than all other competitors they tested against, including most of the leading CBD companies. I challenge everyone in the audience that uses CBD, as well as those of you who may have tried other CBD options and didn't get any results, to try Ascent Nutrition's full-spectrum hemp oil, which is guaranteed to be much stronger and contains more phytonutrients than any others on the market. Just click the link in the description or visit goascentnutrition.com and use coupon code FKN to get 10% off your entire purchase. Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is October Hallum. First, a couple of announcements. If you have a business and you want to advertise with Forbidden Knowledge News, email me, forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. We have a huge audience reach and unbeatable pricing and ad packages. Our website is forbiddenknowledge.news. That's the home of the Forbidden Knowledge Network. You find amazing podcasts from our community. We're always available on Rokfin, Odysee, Rumble, and all podcast platforms. Rokfin is where you get our premium content and all the premium content from every creator on Rokfin. You can also create a free account, get everyone's free content, and all of our regular content is free there as well. You just go to rokfin.com/FKN+, or click the link in the description to sign up. The Forbidden documentary is going to be extremely difficult with the price of gas and everything right now. We won't be able to do this without your help. Production's already being pushed back. If you would like to help, go to supportfkn.com, or we have a PayPal link in the description. Anything is greatly appreciated. Tonight I want to welcome back to the show October Hallum. She is host of The Ancient Gift. She is historian, writer, and intuitive medium. October, welcome back. How you doing?
I'm well, thank you, Chris. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you so much for coming back on. It's great to talk to you again. It seems like forever, even though we live in the same house. This is going to actually be my third attempt at recording a show today. We had some major technical difficulties, but hopefully we're going to get through this one. Now, October, you've been on a few times. You've even co-hosted. You have a show on the network, The Ancient Gifts, which is awesome. Tonight, I want to talk more about your experiences as a medium, your insights, as well as insights into other different realms of high strangeness that may be connected to that phenomena. First, remind the audience a little bit about yourself and your show and kind of just what led you down your path.
Well, I noticed a lot of things when I was a little girl, more than I realized that I was different, because I realized that other people didn't see what I saw all around me. And most of it was to be honest with you, I mean, I hate to sound like cliche, but I see dead people. So I kind of grew up with that. And then I had a lot of just like intuitive feelings, and like I would know people were going to pass away in the family before they passed. Some were kind of expected, a few had cancer and things, but then some were unexpected too. Earthquakes, things like that, kind of has always been with me. And I just kind of shoo-shooed it because how I grew up, I had one, like I told you before, one grandmother encouraged it and the other grandmother was completely against it because she was a Southern Baptist Christian, and that was not of God's work, so to speak. So I grew up kind of conflicted. And so about a few years ago, I finally embraced it. And ever since then, my spiritual journey has opened me up to a broader sense of the best way I can describe it is the universe and my part in it and all of our parts in it. And so I feel very fortunate that I have this ability and I'm able to help people.
Right on. Now you said you recently just kind of came out and started doing this on a mainstream level. You were doing it for a while though, with your friends and family, and even strangers that walk up to you on the street, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, at least 25 years of helping, find a lost pet in the family, or keys or a wallet, or just really silly stuff. I did help my daughter a few years ago, find one of her friends that was lost. We did find her and she was alive, thank God. She's, they're in their 20s. So she was unfortunately lost in kind of a drug situation, but we were able to locate her and get her some help. So I also have the ability to sense illnesses in people. It's not that ability I really haven't honed or really worked on it's not something that I intentionally go out and do, but I do get senses of potential issues or issues that they are already experiencing and they haven't said anything. And then spirit will just come to me and tell me, or my guides, I call them my guides, other people call them spirit, it doesn't really matter, but the higher beings that communicate with me will tell me, this is good for them, tell them to do this and try this. And I don't want to say been 100% accurate, because I'm not, nobody is in this, what we do, right? But in regards to the illnesses and things, I am pretty accurate. So it's interesting.
Now, I know you and I were talking about this the other day, how we believe everyone probably has access to some of these abilities, but some have maybe more talents or access to it than others, maybe even from birth. Now, I know that your family members, like your daughters and some other members of your family, have had abilities too. Do you think this may be like genetic in any way?
Yeah, I do. I think, and people who might doubt that, but, look at people who are master painters or amazing writers or actors or pianists, or any kind of a musician. That tends to run in lineage, not always, but, my father was an amazing carpenter and he was never really trained in carpentry, neither was I, but I love doing stuff with my hands and building stuff and fixing things. So I think that's kind of an innate gift that I was born with. So I kind of think it runs parallel to that idea.
And don't you have a sister that kind of dabbled in numerology and she was an occultist?
Yes. My sister who's passed on, she was, I don't like the word occultist because it has such a carries such a derogatory weight with it. But she was an amazing numerologist. She would say, "What's your birthday?" And you'd tell her, and she'd be like, "You're a da 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 da," and she'd just spit it out. And okay, this means this, and you're on a life path of that, and this thing. And she just was incredible. I always was envious of this. She was a Mensa level genius. She was a brilliant person. But Yeah, she was very intuitive. I'll remember one time I was in my 20s and she called me and I didn't want to tell her what I was doing because I forgot. I mean, I was mom by this time, but I just didn't want her to know what I was doing. And I'm on the phone with her and I'm sitting up on the kitchen counter. My legs are crossed and I'm on the phone and I'm totally lying. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm with so-and-so and we're going here, we're doing something. And this is landlines. Okay. And she's like, don't lie to me. You're sitting on the kitchen counter with your legs crossed and you're at home. You're not gone yet. And I'm like, oh man. So yeah. So I think it is part of the family lineage for sure.
You also have a kind of interesting family history. Now, I don't know how much you want to get into on here, but your father had an interesting background, and this isn't really pertaining to psychic abilities or intuitive abilities or anything, but I think it adds to kind of your story and your upbringing and even some of your consciousness abilities.
My father was in intelligence. He was special forces in Korea. And he traveled a lot when I was growing up. I didn't really live with my dad. I think maybe collectively, if you added all the time, I actually lived with my father in my life, maybe 3 years. I had a very unique childhood, a lot of trauma in my childhood, a lot of painful memories, some good memories. And I think that that's probably heightened my sense of situational awareness. And the ability to read a person pretty quickly. And I've always been really good in sales, things like that. I think that is part of that gift, where you can instinctively kind of, read a person and I don't mean that in a malicious or a manipulating way, but you just get a sense of if somebody's serious, let's say about buying a product, or somebody's serious, a vendor's serious about releasing a new product, whatever that is, whatever that looks like, that's always aided me in my career.
How important do you think belief is when it comes to not only having intuitive abilities or consciousness abilities, but all aspects of even paranormal activity and high strangeness, even, getting into ufology and PSI phenomena?
Well, I will say I had a client a week ago or so, and they expressed the desire to manifest. And the sentence was, I believe in all of this stuff, but it hasn't happened for me yet. And I'm having a hard time believing it can for me. And I think that's a very good example of, in order for a person to achieve something, they have to have the belief that they're not just able to do it, but they deserve it and they already see themselves completing it. In other words, it's not so much, I want to climb Mount Everest. It is, in my mind's eye, I've climbed Mount Everest. Now all I have to do is go train for it, right? So it's that kind of thing, you already see yourself at the end of that. And if you have, I can't, but if those words exist in your language when you're trying to manifest or you're trying to, project a certain outcome for yourself, you're just blocking it immediately, because that doesn't coincide with will, can, is, these are all action adverbs, action words. So these are manifestation words of, you're not saying maybe if everything, if the planets align and if I feel like I can, it is, I'm absolutely going to do it no matter what. And I think that that's the difference between success and manifestation, success in the site that I have and other seers as myself, because I have doubt all the time. I mean, that. I mean, I have big doubt sometimes, and you have to remind me sometimes, that I'm, truly gifted because you've seen it. So it's one of those things, we all get in our own way. So, and the best way I can tell people is, if you really want to achieve something, if you want to hone your gifts of any kind of ability, psychically, intuitively, then you have to get out of your headspace of the I can'ts.
Right, exactly. You approach your readings different now than when you first started. You've kind of developed different methods. Could you talk about basically how you approach a reading and go through it?
Yes, Chris is cheating because he knows exactly what he's asking me. Everyone, just so you know this. Okay, so I had this big fancy idea in my head when I came out of the closet, so to speak, and decided to do readings. And I thought like I had to do it like everybody else. I had to use tarot, or I had to just concentrate in my mind's eye and, and just like have it like come out. But I have always been a writer. And I've always received, when I receive messages and I write, they're super accurate. So I started to practice auto writing, and this was shortly after I started reading. So the first reading I had was a disaster, actually, and I refunded the money because I felt bad because I was so nervous. It was my first time ever like doing it, quote unquote, professionally. Like I said, this isn't 100%, but I think it was also the party that I was reading for wasn't very open, and that's the other thing. Like, when you go into a reader and you have it in your mind, like they're not going to read anything about me. They're not going to be accurate. They're not going to see that puts up like a blocks, if you go into it and you, of course you should always have a healthy amount of skepticism and a desire to, see proof or desire to see, this unfold. But I think having a very open mind and being open to what the reader, because you're paying them. Right? You're paying them for their time and their talent to help you figure out a situation, overcome a past situation, direct you on the path for your future, whatever that might be. It's important to remember that, they're giving you a gift of their abilities to be able to help you. That's why most people do this, I believe. So I started to do auto writing. So what I do is I get the first name and gender of the person. And I don't ask the age or anything. I just tend to just read. And I concentrate right before I do the reading, probably about a half hour or so. And I just start writing. And it can be a word. It can be 2 words. It can be a sentence. I've even written a letter. And what happens is, and it can be obscure things. Like sometimes I'm like, there's no way that this word has anything to do with a human being. Like, how could this possibly make sense? But I'm always guided, like, just say it, just speak the truth, speak your truth. Like, just say what, what's written down, because you have to trust the process. Again, there's the doubt, right? So, and always it's, wow, how, there's no way you'd have known that, or, wow, that's incredible. Like one time recently, there was a gentleman who had never had a reading, and he was from the East Coast. And I had this, one of the lines, I won't forget this, was son, and then like a slash, and then daughter, and then a question mark. So it turns out that this person had fathered a child in his first marriage. And when the child was about 2.5, his wife had came to him and said, "This isn't your child." And it just devastated him because he was like in love with this baby. And he went through really bad depression from it. And when he came out of that, he had met another woman, and they got married, and now they had a 2.5-year-old daughter. But in the reading, I said, well, you still have, the son is still part of your life that, and he said, yeah, oh my God, there's no way you can know it. So even though it wasn't his biological son, he ended up basically adopting the boy, and the boy lives with him currently, who's a teenager now. So it's just interesting how that goes, because normally it would just be like children, or I don't know how to explain it, but that specifically with the slash and the question mark was indicative of me, of that unique situation. So that's kind of how this works.
Right on. Now, I've seen you employ several methods of not only for readings, but for different questions, or I guess different outcomes that you're looking for in your own life. You've used things like a pendulum. Used to use tarot. I'm not sure how much you're using that anymore, but could you talk a little bit about that, maybe starting with the pendulum and what that does?
Well, pendulums are great. I've always had really great results with pendulums, and actually I want to start doing dowsing rods too. I do use tarot a lot. I know you don't see me because you work insane hours, but but I basically it's really the auto writing for a reading, but the pendulum. And sometimes if I get caught up in a reading when I'm in a session with somebody, I will whip out a pendulum for a guidance or direction. Pendulums aren't, I know people are like, oh, you're moving the pendulum. No, you're not. I mean, you've seen the pendulum yourself move, like, back and forth. There's no, and my hand's perfectly still. So that's something doing it. And that, it's not a fan overhead because we don't have a fan on. So, but, and then in the tarot, that's really intimate for me. So I tend to use that more for very close family and friends, more so than like the general public.
Right. Now, I know we've discussed the channeling incident you've had. Now, I don't know if you've had any, not that I know of, that you've had any other occurrences where you've actually channeled a spirit and let them speak through you. Maybe I'd love it if you could remind the audience a little bit about that occurrence, and have you ever had anything else similar to that happen?
Are you talking about the Lebanese woman?
Yes.
Okay. That's funny because I ran into my daughter's friend last month when I went to her shower. And we talked about that instance, and she started tearing up, as soon as we were talking about it. So it's a real emotional thing. So long story short, my daughter is in high school, and she's hanging out with this girl, and she's skipping school, and they're doing, naughty teenager things. And I like the girl, but I know that the girl is confused and headed for the wrong area. And so I don't want my daughter hanging out with her. She's a little older than my daughter. And so I pull her aside and I tell her straight out, I'm very outspoken. And I said, you're not a bad person. I don't want you hanging around my daughter because you're doing stuff that I don't want her getting dragged into, like skipping school and hanging out with the wrong boys, that kind of stuff. And so one day the girl comes over, and I try to have an open mind because I know she was going through some hard stuff at home. And I was always the house where the kids like brought their friends over, and I cooked for everybody, and everybody would spend the night and hang out. And, our house was like home, so anyway, she's over, and I had done a reading for my other's daughter. I think I was doing for my daughter's friends. Anyways, and she goes, hey, can you do a reading for so-and-so? And I said, no, I'm really, really tired. And she's, oh, they're begging me, and I said, no, I don't want to do it. So a couple minutes later, I'm walking by my daughter's room, and I look in and I see the girl, and I don't know why all of a sudden I just had this urge to do this reading. And so I went in there and I said, I'll do the reading. And immediately I'm like, your grandmother's here. And it just went from there. And then I don't even really remember, to be quite honest with you, because according to them, my eyes started to turn brown. Now I have gray eyes, if you can see this. Started to turn, they were brown, not black, but brown. And my face kind of contorted, like where it's like my features were different. And I started speaking Arabic. Now, I don't know how to speak Arabic. I don't know a single word in Arabic, but I was apparently speaking Arabic. And I even called her by her nickname that only her grandmother called her. And I had no idea what that was before the reading. So that immediately freaked her out because she was superstitious anyway about this stuff. So she just freaked out. And when they were shaking me, like, stop, you're freaking us out. And when I woke up, I was like, what? Because they were both crying because they were both freaked out. And I'm like, what happened? So apparently the grandmother came through and told the girl, like, look, I know what you're doing. And all these times that you're talking to me and saying, you wish I was here, I am with you. And I see what you're doing, and you need to stop it, because you're headed for a really bad result, basically. And so,
and she said that in a different language, right?
Right. Right. I mean, I'm paraphrasing very badly, right? But this is what happened. So unbeknownst to the girl, she had some health issues that if she had kept drinking and, smoking pot, stuff like that, it would have really messed her up. It could have even killed her in the long term. So she doesn't drink now. She's engaged. She's, doing an amazing career on the East Coast. She's an amazing woman. I love her to pieces. I call her my other daughter. So yeah, so that was one of the big circumstances.
Are you ready to live a more free, healthy, and abundant life? Transform your yard into a food forest and create a system for self-reliance that's easy and enjoyable with our friends at Food Forest Abundance. No matter where you're starting from, you can become more self-reliant. And you can take your self-reliance to the next level by becoming a producer of your own food through growing and foraging. And learn how to turn your property into an income-producing source of economic self-reliance. They can help you get off grid and learn what systems to employ for food, water, and energy self-reliance, and live abundantly and in full connection with your property and what you produce. Click the link in the description to get started with your very own food forest and have your own sustainable source of livelihood and become self-sufficient with Food Forest Abundance. Just click the link in the description to get started with your very own food forest today. Now, earlier you said, of course, you talk to dead people. Now we know this. What's the dynamic here? Is it just past spirits? I know you also work with your spirit guides. And how does this kind of communication unfold when you're in contact?
You know, I used to think like black and white, right? Where like we live, we die, and we go to heaven or hell, because that's the paradigm I was raised in. And then when I started to like talk to dead people, I started to think that these were disembodied spirits of living people that were trapped in the earth plane or trapped in a situation, looping, whatever that might be. And as I've progressed and I've studied and I've read, and you and I have had many discussions about interdimensional multiverses, time not being, real, that it's a man-made construct for control. And we've talked about the theory of relativity by Einstein, about how, these things can be manipulated basically within the right circumstance, to put it lightly. So what I think happens is that these are frequencies, because, okay, when we live, we're dualities. We go through these iterations, and we're a duality. We're spirit, and we're material. We're whatever, body bag. So our body bag dies at some point, and that spirit is energy. Now we know from science we cannot create energy and we cannot destroy energy. So the energy has to go someplace. And this is where the concept of multiverses come in. And this is kind of where like I start getting really like my mind gets like really discombobulated and blown, because I'm like, this is so beyond my scope of understanding. But this is what's been presented to me by my guides. If they said, if you can take away the construct of time, and you understand that there are multiple dimensions, okay, multiple universes, let's say, that all exist at the same time, and these things, there's no timeline, like linear timeline, okay? There is just events and things that happen. And there really isn't a past, present, and future. These things are all occurring simultaneously, right? And we're this being that's having these experiences, fractured experiences in these dimensions. And stay with me for a second. Now, let's say you die and your spirit goes to the next dimension, which is what I think, loosely heaven would be, I guess. If you think about heaven, hell, and earth, those are 3 dimensions, right? So I guess a lot of us already have that belief system. So what happens is since these multiverses, these universes exist simultaneously all at the same time, and they're kind of looping, that like the past, present, and future are all simultaneously existing. What happens is like there's a crossover, right? And in this crossover, oh, there goes my screen. And in this crossover, I'm able to tune into the frequency of that energy that's in the next dimension. Does that make sense at all?
Yes, it does. And, especially in the sense that I do believe that we're all energy, we're all frequency, and we possibly all could emanate from the same source. I know we've discussed this as well, that possibly at one point in existence, we may have been all one source of light, a source of energy that fractalized in some way, some form, somehow. And we, at some point realized that we were at once part of this source and desire as fractalized pieces to get back at one point. And I think that could be what is happening with people coming to awakenings and having spiritual experiences and spiritual awakenings, is they're realizing that they were once part of this source, and subconsciously they want to get back and connect again to that. What do you think?
I love you gave me an analogy a while ago where you had a center, a ball of, let's say, the universe of light, and it was the center of everything, and it goes in a colander, and then the colander fractalizes, and then like billions of like lights come out of that. They're all separate and individual, yet they're all part of the same thing, that origin of light. I think that's a great analogy. And I think that our concept, we know that we use a very small percentage of our brain. If you've ever seen the movie Lucy, and with Scarlett Johansson, I love that movie because it really highlights that we are capable of so much more, yet we're kind of restricted to what we are allowed to use, and we don't understand why. Like, why would you have 100% of a brain if you can only use about 20% of it? Right?
Yeah.
So and I think, again, that might be a restriction placed in this realm, in this dimension on us, to keep us behave. Well, I hate to say behaving because we don't behave well as humans, but you know what I'm saying, to keep us a little bit more contained than like giving us the abilities that Lucy ends up having, right? When she becomes basically the ether. So I guess that's my answer to your question. And people say, well, and I have seen full apparitions, and I have seen a sea captain walk through a house I rented in Salem, Massachusetts years ago, in full regalia from the waist up, and then mist from the bottom down. And that was my first real like apparition. And I almost peed my pants. I was like, and it was so cold. And I was like, it's like when this happens to you, you deny it. You're like, I just didn't see that. There's no possible way that actually just happened. Like, I just saw a ghost. I just saw a spirit. And what I think that is in those cases, because he looked at me, so he was intelligent. He looked at me like this, and he just like walked through, and he's just maintaining eye contact as he's walking through. And then finally, when he gets to the side, he disappears through the wall, and that's it. The door, actually, because you went out the back. So I think a lot of that, though, are like time loops, are like loops in energy that's contained, like imprinted on that, in that home, because he built that home. That was his home hundreds of years ago.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about this? I had a guest, I'm forgetting who it was, that had the theory that since indeed we are in a multi-dimensional existence, that possibly what we're seeing when we're witnessing spirits or ghosts could be someone or something else in a different reality bleeding through to ours. Like you were saying, there's this overlap, and possibly they're seeing us on the other side, terrified, thinking that we're a ghost or something like that. I don't know. I think that's a good possibility as well. What do you think about that one?
I think, I was talking with writer Lee the other day about deja vu. And I think that's kind of what that is. It's where these two dimensions loop, and so we have a circle, and then they loop. And for that little window of time, you have the knowing of the situation or person or event that's happening, right? I think that's kind of the same thing. Where like when that loop happens, then I think that's when we're highly aware of things, or we're more aware of things. And I think, and I'm not going to say that, it has anything to do with lunar cycles, but I do know, like, as you know, like around a full moon, I can't sleep. I can't sleep for about 2 or 3 days before. I can't sleep the night of a full moon, and usually the night after. And so by the fourth day, I'm exhausted. And I think that has something to do with the frequencies that pull causes, especially to people who are sensitive. I think that can really kind of like, I don't want to say agitate them, but it can even make them more, aware or heightened senses at that time. So I think it's the same thing. And since time doesn't exist, it's time is a number. It's created in order for control. It's created in order for, a system to measure by, right? Everything we do is by time, our age, our work day, everything really, payments of credit cards and card payments and all these, this is all, on the Julian calendar. So I think that if for a moment, if you can just like extract the idea of time, and you can, and you believe in a multiverse or multiple dimensions, then just for a fleeting second, I think your brain can start to grasp what we fully have no idea about. Like we're just in the infancy of starting to understand that. I mean, science has proven that there are at least 11 dimensions. I've heard last time 17. And I want to touch base too real quick, because you had mentioned earlier about consciousness and being connected and being all part of the same thing. And I just read an article that, they're thinking rocks actually have consciousness. And I know that sounds crazy because it's a rock, right? But they also, you and I watched that mushroom documentary where we know that fungi underneath the earth have a central nervous system that connect each other all the way through a forest bed. And these are intelligent communications. So when one, let's say mushroom has a disease or, an issue, then the other mushrooms in the area send their energy, their healing powers to that mushroom or that part of the mushroom system to heal them. And this is a proven scientific thing. So if we look at it, if we take that and we extrapolate that out to our existence as humans, and we all come from the same energy, well, no wonder we're all messed up right now, because if we're all interconnected and we all feed off each other's frequencies and we depend on each other's energies for happiness and peace and stability, well, we know that that's not happening in the world right now because there's a lot of chaos, right? So I think that might be a really interesting thing to really look into.
It is, and I want to go a little deeper into that. If we're, indeed in a multidimensional reality, I believe that there would be duality in every one of these realities. I don't think we can have an existence without light and dark at the same time. And that brings us to the entities within those realities. They would have duality as well. And I know that you have interacted with both negative and positive entities in this existence, right?
Yeah.
I
have.
Yeah, could you talk about some of I know you told us about the spirit that did the full apparition, but what other kind of more malevolent entities have you come across?
Yeah, I've seen some really dark stuff in Salem, Massachusetts, I have to say. I don't really like talking about it because I feel like it gives it power and it gives it the juice to kind of poke its head up and say, ooh, someone's talking about me. But as you well know, because I've helped you before, there is a definite polarity, right? There is light and there's dark. Some people believe you can't have light without dark. I don't necessarily know if I agree with that. I think that the darkness in our world is self-manufactured by all of the negative emotions and the negativity that we as humans are putting out there. So fear is number one, hate, guilt, regret, greed, envy, all these like real negative emotions. Now, and I want everyone to stay with me for a minute and not say she's crazy, but you can, it's okay. I've been called worse. if we didn't have all those things in the world, right? Let's just say, look at any I want to say like a pot of whales, let's say. Now I'm not a marine biologist, but for the most part, they stick together, they take care of their young, they're very protective. They do their migrations annually, and they're centered on basically not just survival, but basically family. Now, of course, I haven't studied whales' personalities, but I'm just trying to pick this out as a kind of a innocuous example. But if we look at that, I don't really think that there's fear in a whale pod, or besides being hunted, obviously, right? But I'm saying they're just existing in nature, and they're surviving and relying on each other, and they're not. There's no innate. You understand what I'm saying? Innate, like evil. They're just there. They're in nature. Like Mother Nature left alone is a beautiful thing. And even though there are lots of animal species that compete for, dominance as far as like the male, elephant seals is a great example. Elk season, the males fight each other over for the females, things like that. Yes, that all exist. But it's based on a primal instinct. It's not based on a material instinct. It's not.
No, I was going to say, you think the evil we experience and commit as humans is innately different than natural, say, animal evil or atrocities committed amongst themselves. And I look at some levels of evil committed as humans in elite factions, and there is no way that I, as a human, could even put myself in their shoes or even imagine committing some of the atrocities that are being committed in our world by certain humans in certain factions, and even with certain states of mind. So I don't know if you would ever consider, is evil, do you think it's introduced to humans in a certain way, that we have a certain level of evil that we're committing that's above the natural level?
Well, we have free will, right? So that's the primal thing that exists in every human. And I think that that's something that it doesn't matter if you're religious or not religious, if you believe in the cosmos as your religion, or if you're a Buddhist, or if you're a Christian, or it doesn't matter if you're a witch, it doesn't matter. Free will is the one law of all universes, all multiverses, all dimension that exists. So with that, and we are, people say we're the highest on the food chain. I kind of wonder sometimes, but I think that with that and with free will, that can become a real dangerous combination. Yeah, I think that we've weaponized free will. I mean, I don't know that I've ever heard of a seagull diving in on a bunch of seagulls and trying to kill all of them. You just don't. I mean, animals kill to eat. Animals kill.
They don't
to
plot
survive.
it out, really.
Right, and they do it. You don't see. I don't think you see lions in the Serengeti going out and killing like 10 antelope when they only need one to eat for the day.
Right.
So I'm not saying that these behaviors don't exist in animals, because I am no way a scientist, but I'm saying for the most part, this is all like the chain of like life, the food chain, the way things progress in Mother Nature. And we're sentient beings that have language and culture, and innately we have greed. I mean,
do you think this ultimately dissolves or gets better with human consciousness evolution? That as we grow and learn that our innate evil might be a little less as we go on?
I think it's cyclical. I think that there have been several iterations of civilizations before ours that we're in now. And I'm not talking in the last 6,500 years, what we're talking, the dawn of like Western civilization, which I don't believe that is true. I think that, we have Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. that what does 12,600 years ago. And there are edifices within that structure that represent races and humanoid figures, even ETs from all over the world. You can, go back and go all the way through Peru. I mean, there's all kinds of monoliths, throughout Peru. The pyramids of Giza, there's a lot of arguments about how old they actually are and who built them. And I think that whenever, they say like, every joke, there's a element of truth, or every what do you call it, legend or myth, there's something real in it, or rumor even, it starts from someplace, right? So I think that these, like a lost city of Atlantis, Tartaria, Lemuria, I think that these are all things that are lost to us. And I think that these are other civilizations, even Mars, they're finding all kinds of structures and odd things on Mars with on the Mars rover. And there's some people who believe that, we do our race comes from Mars, and we came here because we ruined the surface of Mars, basically with war. And, this a section of us was able to make it out and come to Earth and, reproduce. And here we are. So I don't know. I mean, I think that, but I think as human beings, we are innately, geared to do more than survive. Right.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned the ancients. How far do you think we were able to take our consciousness abilities, being uninhibited and not being intoxicated with all the BS and food and indoctrination and everything that has made us the kind of zombified humans that we are today, without access to these amazing consciousness abilities that we probably had in our ancient past, like frequency manipulation, even matter manipulation abilities, of course, psychic communication, all these things that were highly possible and that we most likely had access to. What do you think about that? Do you think that, what do you think the extent of our human consciousness abilities were as ancients?
What I think and what I can prove, right, are way different, very, very far apart. I've been shown a few things, and I have astral projected before, and when I'm in a good space and I'm ready to receive, I do get downloads, this. I think that, I want to say Atlantis. That's a huge, there is some kind of connection with me and Atlantis. I've been fascinated with the legend of Atlantis since I was a child, like child. And, I think that we had telekinesis, teleportation. We had these abilities to telepathy. I think that we, unfortunately, at one time I don't want to say this, whatever hominid species Atlanteans were, because I don't know if they were really Homo sapiens sapien. They could have been, something similar, very similar. Maybe they're the missing link. I don't know. But I think that they had amazing abilities. And for a long time, they had like a utopic society. And I've read a lot of books and articles and research and all kinds of theories about it. But I think really what happened is there was a sect that wanted more power and more, privilege, and used their gifts and abilities and went against the other main part that was good with everything the way they are, and basically instigated what we would call like a nuclear war by using like ginormous like crystals as weapons and being able to harness that kind of power. And if people don't understand, quartz crystals, they do store power. They're in quartz battery, the batteries in your computer, your watches, your cell phones. They're used in a lot of different applications. So I'm not just spitting this out of the air here. There is some science to this. So, and I think that whatever happened with them caused a cataclysmic shift in the earth somehow, and caused a huge earthquake, a tsunami, a volcano, something that triggered through their weaponry. I mean, we know now, like if you went and dropped a bomb in a volcano, that's going to stir the volcano and make the volcano erupt, right? So really doesn't, and there's weather manipulation. There's, what do you call that? We always talk about that up in the air when they fly by and they
the
spray.
chemtrails.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about that. And so we know that the technology we have is a foreign technology in that it's something that we've developed, and it's not from Earth. It's not from using our energy and perpetuating like ley lines and things, you know, like that, like natural earth grids and energy, and if anybody doubts me, I'm perfectly fine with that. But if you really want to know more about this kind of stuff, go look up Tesla. I mean, he knew how to distribute. He wanted to distribute free electricity around the world in 1918, 1916. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're talking 100 years ago. This gentleman had Bluetooth technology. He the death ray. You know, look into the Manhattan experiment. I mean, this is old news. This isn't new stuff. This is old stuff. And for whatever reasons, it's been quashed. But the one thing that hasn't been quashed that I've noticed in my lifetime that's getting better and better and better is developing weapons to kill people. I mean, look at, you know, smart bombs, look at nuclear technology, look at bioweapons, look at, you know, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The military-industrial complex is certainly thriving when it comes to technology, and we haven't seen. I think we were all talking about this too. We haven't seen anything much new come out of technology except for computer chips and war machines, which is quite sad. But I want to go back to consciousness and spirituality a bit. You were talking about the incident that you helped me with a spiritual attachment. What are your thoughts on these? Do you think that everybody, well, not everybody, but do you think more people than probably realize have spiritual attachments? Do you think it's a more common thing than talked about?
For sure. I think that Western medicine specifically too, like if you were to go into Asia, let's say Chinese or even Japanese, and let's say you were presenting issues of a possession or an attachment, they're more likely, and I'm not talking China now, I'm talking China back pre-communism, okay? They're way more likely to address this as a spiritual battle or spiritual treatment than a medical, you know, like take a pill and call me. And if the pill doesn't work, then you have you're bipolar or you're schizophrenic or whatever. I think a lot of people are also programmed from birth, really, to think a certain way and believe a certain way. So if you pick up an attachment and something happens, like the guy that walked by me, the sea captain, I saw this, like, just as I'm looking at you, no different, right? But I still have trouble rectifying it today, like, because it was, if you've ever experienced it, you'll know what I'm talking about. You're at a loss for words, and your mind is trying to rationalize it. You're trying to figure out how this can possibly be, right? This guy was from the 18th century, I would think. So I think that people that seek, you know, Western medicine, and, you know, we don't treat the root of situations in this country. We mask the symptoms with medicine. And so when you do that and you don't treat the root of the problem's either going to get worse or it's just going to stay the same and never get better. You've got to pull a weed out by the root in order to, like, have it not grow back, right? And I'm not saying that every single person that has mental issues, medical issues, mental health issues, you know, has an attachment or are possessed. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying that these situations are not real, because that would be ludicrous for me to say that of course they're real. But there are some times I think that people, you know, do fall under that less traveled road of spiritual warfare, that that they're not either realizing that they're in. Maybe they've gone to a cemetery with, as a fun for, shits and giggles with their friends at midnight to see if they can see any ghosts, and they're taking pictures and something comes home with them. Or maybe they're dabbling in the occult and they're having seances, or they're using a pendulum and they don't know what they're doing, or they're conjuring up, they think, the devil, demons are cool, and, they're playing around with that stuff. Like there's all kinds of stuff. And attachments can run in families. There's families, hexes and curses, and that can follow through generations. So sorry.
That's interesting. You said hexes and curses. That is probably a lot different type of attachment than I would imagine something from like childhood trauma or something natural that might have occurred during a person's development that caused them to have this kind of spiritual attachment that they held on to. I imagine curses and things of that nature would be a lot different, maybe harder to get rid of. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that anything only has power if you believe in it and you fear it. I think that anything is breakable. For instance, one of the things that was attached to you was put there by somebody. And I have to tell you, I had to fight like hell to get rid of it. And you know this. And you had a visceral reaction when that happened. But the proof is in, it's either a placebo effect, because like right after you had a sense of peace around you, you slept better than you slept since you were a kid, and you had a sense of knowing that I don't think you've ever had before. It was like wow, that just really happened. Like curses and attachments that are brought on, and sometimes it can be like an ancestor who did something really bad, just really bad. Like let's say you have a warlord somewhere and they like slaughter like thousands of people, right? That stain and energy that they're doing there would make sense, right? To follow their lineage possibly through generations, because that's built up negative energy. That's got to go somewhere, right? So it could, maybe the land is cursed, maybe the family's cursed, maybe, whatever, but there are people who put things on other people. I mean, words are very powerful. And for people who say, oh, that's, baloney, words are not powerful. Well, let me see. I could tear you down in a sentence like that, or I can build you up in a sentence like that. Don't tell me that doesn't carry power.
Yeah, you're right. Words are spells. They're very powerful. Now, while we're kind of going along this line, what do you think about egregores or thought forms that could actually manifest in people's lives as negative spirits or entities or energy, or even just negative occurrences because they're putting out so much negativity from themselves? What do you think about that?
That's earlier when you were asking me about, about the negative stuff. And I'm like, I don't really like to talk about it. I think that we are way more powerful beings than we give ourselves credit for. And there is a, how do I say that? An energy that everybody has. You have an electric magnetic field around you, right? That projects out. We know this. This is scientific. They've proven this. And that is kind of like, it's kind of like your salvation and your protection at the same time, and protecting you from outside forces and everything. When you damage that, or when you manipulate that, you're kind of opening yourself up for other things to kind of come into that field. And once they're into that field, it's a lot harder to get rid of them. You know what I mean? It's they're parasite, they're parasitical, they're parasites, and they feed off that. They feed off the negative and the fear, and a lot of people think, well, if I ignore it, it'll go away. But sometimes they don't go away, because sometimes those attachments are so strong that you actually need outside help to get them off of you. So I think it's very important, when we were talking earlier about manifestation and then consciousness came up, and now we're talking about words, these are all part and parcel of consciousness. Like you have a thought come into your head, and you give that thought energy, and then you speak those words, and then you turn those words into deeds. Well, you've just created a reality for yourself. And it could be as simple as, I see a black pen, I'm going to doodle, I'm going to pick it up. I said black pen, I thought black pen, I'm going to doodle, I'm doodling, Okay, very simple analogy, right? But when you are talking about, thinking about evil spirits and, oh my God, what can they do to me? They can harm me, they can harm my kids, they can harm my family, well, guess what? You're feeding them now. You're giving them fear. Have you ever had a really negative person in your life? Like a really negative person, like no matter what, they were just always pissed off, or they were always like complaining, and you would try to like, oh, don't think like that. This is, you can do this, or you have the ability to do that. I believe in you. And, every time you talk to you, just Debbie Downer, just constantly like bitch, moan, moan, moan. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Well,
those are energy vampires. Okay. And this is way before what we do in the shadows. But those people, I believe that their magnetic field is interrupted, and they are literally feeding off of you. And so when you're either down in the slums with them going, yeah, life sucks. And they're like, that's nice, because now I have miserless company. Or you're like, oh no, you can do better. It's okay, Susie, come on, like, let's go do something fun, blah, 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 blah. And then the whole time they're just like a wet towel, they're feeding off of you there too, because that's taking all of your energy off of what you should be focusing on, which is yourself and being positive and being part of the bigger picture in a positive way. And you're handing that over to somebody who absolutely doesn't want to make the choice to do better, have better, be better. Right. Yeah. So I think that a lot of it all goes back to free will.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on there. Now, going back to the multidimensional nature of our reality and possible life forms or entities that could be existing in these realities, I know we were walking the other day, and even before, you said you sensed fae folk or the fairies. What are these types of entities to you? What are fairies?
Boy, I didn't know you were going to bring this up. And
Gotcha.
You see, you're cheating. Fairies. So, I've read a lot about fairies. I'm in no way an expert. I think one of my daughters is a fairy whisperer. She's loved fairies since she was could walk, and she's got them all over her house. And she's always been, a naturalist, loves the animals and nature. I think fairies are beings that exist in nature. And, I guess elementals could fit into the fairy realm. And I think that they're protective of Mother Nature and that realm that exists in purity. And I know that there are some, or elves too, right? They're kind of all, I think, kind of some lore, they're kind of all housed together in the same kind of, dimension, fairies, elves, whatever, trolls, all these mythical beings. But fairies, I think, are really like guardians of nature for me. And I know that there are stories of them not being so nice. And I get that, because look at humans and look what we've done to Mother Nature. And look where our planet's headed, with all the pollution and all the things that are going on. And imagine if your sole purpose in life was to guard something, to preserve it, to make sure it's healthy, Gaia, Mother Earth. And you had something that was just trashing it, like poisoning it, not respecting it. I mean, you probably would be pretty ticked off too. And you wouldn't want those beings coming into where you live and trying to take over your realm. Right. So I think that they're, innately pure and good and out for, to protect Mother Nature. But I do believe that there's probably a faction of them that can be, kind of mean because they're angry.
Do you think they could possibly be connected or confused with what some consider extraterrestrials? Or do you think it's all the same thing? Do you think interdimensional beings, fairies, extraterrestrials, this could all be kind of part of the same paranormal soup?
I think that I know that there's a lot of stories that have, like, you'll see a Bigfoot and then you'll see a UFO. Or you'll see a Bigfoot, a UFO, and then you'll have like poltergeist activity at home. I think that these are all energy bands of some sort that we're registering in our brain in a certain way. And maybe these entities have the ability to project what they want us to see. Maybe it's, I'm going to be a scary Sasquatch because I know you're terrified of seeing me in the forest and I don't want you back here because I'm really an ET and we have a base that's been cloaked and we don't want humans back around here because you might trip and find us. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there, right? And to even scare you more, when you get home, we're going to do some manipulation of energy around you and really freak you out and think that you're haunted, so I don't know the answer to that question. For me, though, I do feel that fairies and elves and things of that nature are really existent in what I would call old Earth, even maybe pre-Atlantean, and I'm talking a long, long time ago. And I think they've been cloaked or they've cloaked themselves, and their ability to do so has preserved what's left of them. Because I believe that a lot of the, legends come from someplace. I mean, people are like, oh, there's no such thing as dragons. Well, look at a pterodactyl. They have full pterodactyl bones in museums. I mean, look at that. That's a dragon. Didn't spit fire, but everything else, it's a huge flying lizard looking thing. So, mermaids, who knows? I mean, possibly not, half beautiful woman that's a songstress, singing and luring sailors to their certain death. But perhaps it was some kind of a hybrid species and, doesn't exist anymore, or it's so deep in the ocean. We've only explored 5% of our ocean that we know of. So I don't know. I mean, I just think that these beings are there. And again, this is out of our breadth of knowledge, because I do believe that we are destructive creatures. And if we did know about them, they would not probably still be here.
Well, you just mentioned we're destructive creatures. That we are. Are you encouraged about the new upcoming era that we're headed in, and what the seemingly awakening process that we're going through and the changes that we're going through? It seems that all our old systems, they're going to fail. It seems inevitable, especially economic systems, financial systems. We are heading into the age of Aquarius, the age of air, age of supposedly spiritual enlightenment. So what do you think? Are you encouraged about where we're headed in the future, even with all the BS happening? Do you think we'll come out of it a little bit better off than we were before?
Well, it depends on when you talk about an age of intelligence. Is that AI? Then no, I don't believe that that's we're headed good there at all. Right?
No, I don't think it's the technological age. I think it's the opposite.
Well, but AI is intelligence, artificial intelligence, right? So if you're talking like the age of intelligence in that way, no. There are always going to be peaks and valleys in every civilization when it comes to, finances. I've been through a few recessions in my life. I mean, you don't have to look back very far, that our country struggled, in the 20s and the 30s, even after World War I, the whole world was basically still in a depression. That's why we had World War II. And then before that, the Civil War, the North was ginormously successful and the South was struggling, even though they reigned in agricultural in the cotton industry, and but there was very few. The elites had a lot of money, and the have-nots had little. And then before that, you're talking about and I'm going back in American history for a reason. Okay, stay with me. And then before that, you got the Revolutionary War, and America struggled after the Revolutionary War, and then we had another war right after that. So, I'm not encouraged. I would say that it would take a very large consciousness shift to create a different ending to where we're headed now.
So you're not encouraged. You don't think we're headed towards a good ending?
Well, there is no ending, Chris, because you're talking about the ending of of a civilization. I do want this, the way things are now. Yeah, I want to change. I mean, and there's always kind of darkness right before light. So I think that we're headed to a different time, one that I really don't have an idea what that looks like, because I'm not going to sit here and predict, anything, because I think people who try to do that are very foolish, because I think that there's so many factors and futures that are pliable with free will and outside, agents that can come in and cause disruptions in a trajectory that somebody's on, or a civilization is on. But I can tell you that if the greed and the fear and the all the evil and negative emotions that men create still stay in this lane and continue on, that we're headed for a darker time before the light comes. But I do believe always light prevails. Always. Love and light always prevail. And I'm not trying to be woo-woo about love and light, because I don't really say that often, that, but I do feel that love and light bringers, people who, walk in the light and try to, help other people and live their life in that way. I do believe in the end that will be successful, but I do think that we have a lot of growing pains to go through.
Yeah, and it's probably, like you said earlier, cyclical. We'll probably rise to a certain pinnacle of our consciousness evolution, and then fall again, and then do it all over again. It seems to be that is the cycle of our life and existence here on this planet. We get to a pinnacle, have a major cataclysm, get reset, and start all over. So we look forward to that. That's good times. Let's take the last few minutes here. Tell the audience a bit more about your readings, how to contact you, and anything else you got going on that you'd like to talk about.
Well, you can contact me at theancientgift222@gmail.com if you'd like to book a reading. I am booking at the end of June now, into July. I want, right now I've kind of taken a little bit of a hiatus, as you know, from podcasting, to focus on some health issues and try to get better. So once I am feeling better and up to it, I will reboot the Ancient Gift and start podcasting again. I am trying to put the finishing touches on the Kindreds book I've been writing for forever and trying to get that published. And, just kind of really focusing on staying in the positive lane and doing the best I can every day. That's all we can do. So.
Excellent. Well, everybody, if you'd like to get a reading, that is the ancientgift222@gmail.com. We'll have that in the description. October, thank you so much. And we're definitely going to do it again soon.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Have a good night.
Until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow.